investigator and the resurrection detective Marcus Hale had seen his fair share of crime scenes, gruesome murders, organized crime, and corruption at every level. His work had made him cynical, questioning the very nature of truth and justice. But nothing in his 15 years of service had prepared him for the case that would change his life forever. It all began with a call from an old acquaintance, Father Michael. The priest had contacted him after hearing rumors that a group of archaeologists and scholars had uncovered an ancient manuscript, one that allegedly documented the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The manuscript was said to hold startling new evidence, challenging both religious and historical perspectives. Curiosity piqued. Marcus, ever the skeptic, agreed to take a look. He wasn't one to dabble in faith or theology, but the investigator in him needed to know the truth. Was this an elaborate hoax? A desperate attempt to exploit religious belief? Or could there really be something to this ancient text? The manuscript was housed in a small, dusty museum tucked away in a forgotten corner of the city. The curator, a frail man named Dr. Samuel Hart, greeted Marcus with a nervous handshake. "I hope you'll approach this with an open mind," he said, leading him down narrow hallways lined with old relics and dusty books. In a dimly lit back room, Marcus was shown the manuscript. It was fragile, written in an archaic form of Greek, its pages yellowed with age. The document was attributed to a scholar named Theophilus, a figure who had lived in the 1st century, shortly after Jesus' death. The text chronicled an in-depth account of the events surrounding the resurrection, events that were curiously absent from most mainstream historical records. Marcus studied the manuscript with a trained eye. He was no expert in ancient texts, but he had enough knowledge of forensics and history to spot inconsistencies or forgeries. As he read, he became entranced by the vivid descriptions. It was not simply a retelling of Jesus' rise from the dead. It was a detailed account of the emotional and psychological aftermath experienced by those who witnessed it. Theophilus wrote about the disciples, shattered by grief, terrified of Roman retaliation, and struggling to believe the incredible story they had just lived. The accounts matched up with what Marcus knew of the time, the political tensions, the fear of persecution, but there was something else in the words, a deep sense of awe. The writer spoke not just of historical events, but of a profound transformation that seemed to defy logic. Marcus spent the next few weeks researching the manuscript. He scoured ancient texts, cross-referenced with biblical accounts, and consulted historians. The more he dug, the more perplexed he became. The evidence he uncovered was compelling. He couldn't disprove the authenticity of the document. No forgeries, no inconsistencies. What was even stranger was the sudden wave of unexplained phenomena that seemed to follow the investigation. He began to experience things he couldn't explain. Dreams of walking through Jerusalem, feeling the heat of the sun on his skin, hearing the crowd's murmurs on the day of the crucifixion. He even found himself revisiting his own past. His father, a devout man, had passed away years ago, but Marcus could never quite bring himself to pray at his funeral. Now, in his moments of solitude, he found his thoughts turning toward God. One evening, after yet another night of reading Theophilus' manuscript, Marcus found himself sitting in a quiet church. The pews were empty, save for a lone figure in the back. It was Father Michael. The priest noticed him and waved him over. "I see you've been deep in thought," Father Michael said, his eyes twinkling with knowing kindness. Marcus gave a slight, uncomfortable shrug. "I don't know what to believe anymore. This whole case It's shaken everything I thought I knew. Father Michael nodded gently. Faith is not about having all the answers. It's about trusting in the unknown. The resurrection is not a mystery to be solved. It's a miracle to be experienced. Marcus frowned. But how can I believe in something like that? A man coming back from the dead? It defies everything I know about biology, about life. The priest's gaze softened. What if it's not about what you know? What if it's about what you feel? Marcus leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. He had investigated countless mysteries, uncovered every hidden truth. And yet, the one thing that eluded him was the deeper truth that lay within his own heart. The resurrection wasn't something he could explain. It was something he had to believe, something that transcended evidence. I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of faith, Marcus muttered. Father Michael smiled warmly. Faith doesn't ask for certainty, Marcus. It asks for trust. And sometimes that's all we have. That night, as Marcus walked home under the pale light of the moon, something shifted inside him. The cynicism that had defined him for so long began to crack. It wasn't a sudden epiphany or a dramatic moment of revelation. It was more like a seed planted in the quietest corner of his soul, waiting to grow. He couldn't prove the resurrection. He couldn't explain the strange dreams or the inexplicable emotions that had overtaken him. But as he stood in front of his apartment building, he paused, closed his eyes, and whispered a simple prayer. God, if you're there, show me the way. In the weeks that followed, Marcus began attending church more regularly. He spent time in quiet contemplation, reflecting on the life and teaching of Jesus, trying to understand what it meant to believe. He didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, he felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. The case had led him to the truth, not just of the resurrection, but of his own need for faith. And while the investigation was over, Marcus had uncovered something far more important than any mystery or puzzle. He had found a deeper connection to God, a faith that would carry him through the hardest of times, just as it had carried countless others throughout history. As he left the church one evening, the sun setting behind him, Marcus smiled quietly to himself. In seeking the truth, he had discovered something far greater, the power of belief. And for the first time in his life, he felt truly free. If you are struggling with faith in God, then remember the words of Father Michael. Faith is not about having all the answers. It's about trusting in the unknown. The resurrection is not a mystery to be solved. It's a miracle to be experienced. May you walk into the reality of that experience. God bless you.
Thank you for watching. Kindly like, comment, and subscribe. Click on the notification bell so you can be alerted anytime a new video is uploaded. And please don't forget, share and be a blessing to someone. God richly bless you. Shalom.